A poltergeist that's strong enough to twist a man's arm and also cunningly avoids media cameras. This scarily intelligent and angry being hounded a share household despite all attempts to evict it. In April 1998, several news outlets around the Darwin, Australia region followed up on a bizarre phenomenon reported by 5 tenants of a bungalow in a small town called Humpty Doo. The distraught residents complained that some kind of ghost was running riot within their household, not just annoying, but sometimes dangerous. Journalists were attending the property filled with scepticism, but then emerging completely shaken. Among their number were the local Northern Territory News and the Litchfield Times, who went in prepared for a hoax and came out rattled. Pebbles, knives, scissors, shards of broken glass, and other objects of unknown origin were haphazardly flying throughout the rooms of the house 24 hours a day, creating constant daily fear and sleeplessness at night. Another unnerving aspect was unexplained Scrabble tiles forming words and possibly messages such as help, skin, car, fire, and many more. One of these words was the name Troy, which provided a clue as to the identity of the spirit. 2 months earlier, a young man named Troy, who was a friend of some of the tenants, had met a horrible end. He had been driving a utility van stacked with tins of paint thinner and which had crashed into a tree. He lost his life in the hideous inferno of fire. Those most disturbed by the activities of the poltergeist were the more recent arrivals in the house, Andrew and Kirsty Agius, who had a baby daughter named Jasmine, aged 11 months old. The other tenants were Dave Clark, Jill Somerville, and a man known as Murph. All of the adults were saving for their own homes and worked, but the Agius family had to maintain constant vigilance for their little girl. The media reporters who visited the household seemed to be targeted by the angry entity. ABC reporter Tracy Farrer received a painful and unprecedented electric shock from her microphone when she sat down at a table to interview Kirsty Agius. Immediately after this, an object from nowhere clattered down in front of her. She was astonished to see a small brown shell like some she had been collecting at the beach the day before. The spirit seemed able to make personal digs at individuals involved in the haunting, which is not uncommon in poltergeist occurrences. However, much worse was to come, and in the meantime the bizarre events were making global news, with the tenants receiving calls from not only all over Australia, but Britain, Scandinavia and the United States. Another reporter named Nikki Voss from the Northern Territory News related that she and her photographer had visited the house with an attitude of extreme scepticism, which was soon shattered. As they stepped into the kitchen, they had to immediately duck to avoid a beer mug hurled with astonishing accuracy through a small hole in a window pane. Later, while standing in another room with their backs to a solid, windowless wall, a barrage of small objects peppered them painfully on the backs of their necks. The solid spray turned out to be gravel. Those commentators hoping to prove a hoax were unable to produce any evidence. One suggested that the tenants could be loading the blades of ceiling fans with sharp knives, broken glass and stones, then launching them unexpectedly with the flick of a switch. Kirsty Agius was quick to point out that she was already worried enough about her infant daughter's safety without allowing such potentially deadly pranks to be played. Frustrating for the journalists was the entity's obstruction of them gaining supporting visual evidence, violently sabotaging camera operators' attempts to film the events. When the 7 Network's Today Tonight program sent a team headed by reporter Greg Quayle, they found it difficult to piece together conclusive images. They initially received a cold reception on finding Scrabble tiles constantly rearranged on the bathroom floor with messages of "Go," "No TV," and "No camera." The television crew, as well as numerous other witnesses, including 3 priests, found themselves subjected to unbelievably hostile acts on an hourly basis. These included a pair of scissors plunged into the swimming pool, a bullet from unknown origin slamming onto the kitchen table, a steak knife plunged into a cameraman's hire car, bedding hurled against a wall, and a spanner smashing into a kitchen cupboard with such force as to rock a film camera. However, any footage they were able to record on film and videotape always contained elements of doubt. A crew member commented, "We're all seeing it, but it's like we're being deliberately blocked." One newspaperman, Max Anderson, who also arrived as a non-believer, was later compelled to accept the evidence of his eyes. In his report in the Australian newspaper, he described watching knives, glass and a bullet hurtling through the rooms, however perfectly timed for when cameras were pointing elsewhere or the view was blocked. Finally, a frustrated cameraman begged the ghost to cooperate for once, saying that if they could show its activity on camera, then they would go. Within minutes, there was an incident caught by 3 cameras of a baby's bottle toppling from a microwave. However, someone's leg obscured a clear shot the second the bottle began to fall, again throwing the incident into question. Anderson wrote in his article that the timing was not just excellent, but genius, like a taunting gesture. In another astonishing incident, 2 Scrabble tiles fell from the direction of the ceiling and perched themselves neatly on top of an audio technician's fluffy microphone. The 2 letters formed the words "Go." The Today Tonight crew obligingly left, and the network arranged for a local freelance cameraman to capture additional shots. He managed to film mysteriously flying crockery, but the footage could not be used as it was unable to be checked against other camera angles. It was around this time that the house tenants were summoned to court by their landlord to fight an eviction notice based on damage to the property. Bizarrely, their lawyer successfully argued that an unruly spirit had caused the minor level of damage that had been done, and the magistrate ruled in the tenants' favour. They were able to stay in the house. In late April 1998, the 7 Network televised episode 1 of its investigation when the program attracted a huge audience. Episode 2 was shelved when, despite Greg Quayle's first-hand testimony, a tape editor spotted a reflected image of an object thrown over a cameraman's head, causing network executives to get cold feet. However, in the light of a mass of eyewitness accounts, reports of their own film crew, and extensive footage of the sheer aggregation of flying glass, knives, batteries and pebbles, most independent investigators and reporters remained convinced. They continued to swarm around the house, generally agreeing that the phenomena were too overwhelmingly plentiful to dismiss as deception. The tenants became even more frightened when a large cross and trident formed in stones suddenly appeared. They asked Father Tom English, who was later interviewed on ABC Radio Darwin, to help. He said that while blessing the house, he was shocked when an object materialised out of nowhere and slammed onto a steel table. It was a .44 Magnum bullet. When he started to sprinkle holy water, a medicine bottle exploded into view and then smashed against a wall. Some force then wrenched his crucifix and Bible from his hands and tossed them flying across the room. On retrieving his Bible, he found that several pages had been torn loose. 2 other priests reported having similar experiences in the house. One, who was from the Greek Orthodox Church, set up an altar on the kitchen table. As he knelt to pray, the presence snatched a large book from his hands and then twisted one of his arms painfully behind his back. In May, less than a month after their eviction notice had been overturned, all of the suffering tenants decided they had had enough and it was time to leave. The 5 adults and baby Jasmine quit the property for good, and the following February, the house owners renovated it and added a second story. They assured anyone who asked that the ghost was gone, and we can only hope that Troy's tormented soul had indeed moved on.